Over time, the evolution which has happened from a concept which was not as much valued to today, I know most of the businesses, this is the center of the plate. We know that today, no longer we can think of sustainability as something we can run a business model and be a business which is sustainable and run at the sweet spot of between sustainability and between business model. In my mind, it is exactly the same spot. You have to run sustainability in the same spot as you run the business. If the business model is not integrated between the two, it won't have long legs and won't survive in times to come. Let me give you 3 stark realities to emphasize the point. First, air pollution today causes 7 million deaths each year, according to World Health Organization. This is more than the number of people we have lost to COVID-19. Second, 1 million species are at risk of extinction because of human actions. Loss of biodiversity has a rippling effect in the environment, impacting human life incalculably. Third, the demand for water is expected to outstrip supply by 40% by 2030. Solving for these issues now is extremely mission critical for all of us. As organization, there's a lot that each of us can do in the area to run our business sustainably. In my mind, it always starts with what are the risk areas in the area of sustainability that we have to put our organization's might behind. This could be coming from the business model that we have. It could be coming from the environment that we're operating at. That becomes the first point. Second, in my mind, these actions which we have to do are genuinely multi-year in nature. Because we know in next 2, 3, 5, 10 years' time, they won't get delivered and answered. Which means every organization will need to have a multi-year performance model where resource allocation, where priority will have to be multi-year defined at the beginning and then followed through performance management year after year. It's a skill set that we need to have as India Inc. Third, I genuinely believe this is not a zero-sum game. This is not an area we want to compete and be better against each other. This is an area we want to join forces. We want to forge partnerships. And those partnerships, in my mind, will be force multiplier for us to get our job done in the area of sustainability. Today's conclave has been designed recognizing that sustainability is exactly the same point, which is not a zero-sum game. And the entire value equation with human needs come together to solve the pressing issues that we have. We have a keynote address by Shri Jayan Sinha later. I look forward to his valuable insights. Later today, we'll also have Mr. Abhijit Ghorpade discussing his insights on enabling climate actions through government interventions. We also have a series of interesting panel discussions on the link between sustainability and improving the top line, scaling climate change for emerging markets, and green deals, green bonds. I welcome all our esteemed members and moderators and panelists who are going to support us with thought and leadership in the room today. And I hope that these sessions trigger and leave you with at least one thought as you leave from the room as to what you could do in your area of influence differently. I thank the Sustainability Committee for doing an excellent job in crafting a fabulous agenda for today. I would like to thank also HSBC, HUL, PwC, and DTDC for sponsoring the event. And now, without further ado, let me hand over to Nina to take the program forward.
Thank you, Mr. Tiwari, for a warm welcome address. Mr. Sinha is delayed, and as soon as he joins us today, he will address us. So we will start first with the fireside chat. For that, I would like to invite Mr. Anirban Ghosh, Chairperson Sustainability Committee, Bombay Chamber, and Head Center for Sustainability, Mahindra University, for a fireside chat on enabling climate action, what should the government do next, with Mr. Abhijit Ghorpade, Director, State Climate Action, Department of Environment and Climate Change, Government of Maharashtra. I request both the speakers to come on dais. Over to you, Mr. Ghosh.
Good afternoon, Abhijit ji. Thank you very much for taking time out to join us for this conversation. As you know, the governments have been at it for the last 2 weeks in Dubai, hammering out the new agreement, or the more advanced agreement, shall we say, on climate. There's a lot of noise around that conference as to some things are good and some things are not. But there's always the conversation that after all these agreements are signed, What is it that happens on ground? And that's what we're going to talk about with Abhijit ji today. Maharashtra has been one of the leaders in climate action in our country, but let's get an inside look into the work that's happening in Maharashtra on climate action. So Abhijit ji, why don't you share with us what's the vision on climate action for the state of Maharashtra?
Thank you, Anirban. And let me at the outset express my heartfelt thanks and sense of gratitude to the Bombay Chamber of Commerce and Industries, the oldest chamber of commerce that we have in the country, for inviting me to this fireside chat. Of course, there's no fire on the side, but sadly the fact is that the earth itself is on fire. We would all appreciate the fact that climate change is the greatest challenge faced by mankind in the 21st century. And we are, in fact, living in a state of planetary emergency. India, as you are aware, is a signatory to all the major international conventions related to climate change, notably to the Paris Agreement, of which COP is the fallout. The NDCs, the Paris Agreement sets a goal of limiting the average global temperature rise to 2 degrees Celsius compared to the pre-industrial times, with further efforts to reduce it to limit it to 1.5 degrees Celsius. The nationally determined contributions, the NDCs, are the heart and soul of Paris Agreement. India, the Prime Minister set out the goal of net zero by 2070 at COP26. India also aims at reducing the emission intensity of its GDP by 45% by 2030. It also aims at reducing its dependence on fossil fuels for electricity generation by 50% by 2030. This on the one side. And on the other side, we all know that India is the 5th largest economy in the world with the GDP of 3.7 trillion US dollars, aiming to be a $5 trillion economy. And Maharashtra is the engine of India's economic growth. It's the largest subnational economy of the size of 437 billion US dollars, contributing the highest to the national GDP at 14%, the highest to the national industrial output at 15%, the highest to the exports, national exports in terms of value at 20%, and it aspires to be a $1 trillion economy by 2027. This on the other hand. So how to reconcile these two objectives with the overarching objective of net zero by 2070 is the real challenge. So undoubtedly, the solution lies in charting a sustainable path of development, which is mapped into Maharashtra's climate vision by means of the State Climate Action Plan, which has been recently prepared.
Good. I'm glad that there is a climate action plan that is looking at green growth and not green in lieu of growth or growth in lieu of green. We will get into further details. You know, in the recent past, we've had these cloud bursts in Bombay. We've always had these dry spells in Marathwada and Vidarbha, which seem to get accentuated with climate change. What are the risks that you see that climate change is going to bring for Maharashtra in particular that need to be addressed through the climate action plan?
Well, you are absolutely right. Of late, the state of Maharashtra has been a witness to rising incidents of heat waves and erratic rainfall, hailstorms, droughts, floods, famines, and cyclones. When you look at the risks that we are facing, and incidentally this year, 2023, is said to be the hottest year ever recorded in history. But these risks need to be analyzed in the context of the state's ecology. Maharashtra, as we all know, is the second most populated state in the country. It is the 3rd largest state in geography. But this geography is not only wide, but equally varied. It has 9 agroclimatic zones. Rainfall is with a lot of diversity. The average rainfall is 1,250 millimeters. Konkan receives 2,000 millimeters of rainfall, and Marathwada receives only 600 millimeters of rainfall. We have a long coastline of 720 kilometers with the 5th largest mangrove cover in the country. We have the Western Ghats, rich in biodiversity. It has been declared as the biodiversity hotspot by UNESCO. On the eastern side of the western coast, we have the leeward side. We have the rain shadow area, where rainfall is scanty, so also in Marathwada. We have barely 16% of forest cover, far away from the ideal of 33% required. Of late, if we look at the trends of the last 50 years, then you see the rising trend in temperature. Both the daytime as well as nighttime temperatures have been rising. The daytime temperatures have been rising faster than the nighttime temperatures, so the diurnal range is increasing. The trend will continue till throughout the 30s as well. The most warmest districts are going to be in Vidarbha, like Gadchiroli, Chandrapur, Yavatmal, Gondia, and Nandurbar up north. If you look at rainfall, then rainfall monsoon has been erratic. The monsoon cycle itself begins a month late. When it rains, it pours. It's followed by long dry spell. So monsoon somehow catches with the average, but it's of little use from agriculture point of view for water conservation. There's a global sea lice level increase, which would affect adversely all the 5 coastal districts of the state, including Mumbai. It would adversely affect the coastal communities, the coastal infrastructure, and the ecosystem. Almost 85% of the state is affected by drought, Marathwada in particular, and the central part of the state. Last 50 years, there has been a 3-fold increase in the intensity of drought due to increase in the ocean temperature of the Indian Ocean, surface temperature. The winds catch up with a lot of energy they get from moisture. So as a result, there is increase in precipitation, causing a lot of floods. There has been a 4-fold increase in floods in the last decade. Now, if you look at cyclones, the incidence of cyclones and tropical storms, there is a 3-fold increase over a decade. Traditionally, the east coast of the country has been vulnerable to cyclones. But now, the cyclones have, the incidence has increased even on the west coast. So these are the major challenges which the state is facing, and we have to be prepared from disaster management point of view so that we can protect our infrastructure, lives, as well as livelihoods.
This is a very sobering thought, really, that you shared with us. And even as we stumble through the situations we face year on year, I don't think we relate with the trends, the big change that is happening. So thank you for sharing with us the intensity and magnitude of the change that we are experiencing here in Maharashtra. In fact, at one of the COPs, the UN COPs, I saw a simulation of what is the likely impact of climate change on 5 cities around the world, one of which was Mumbai. And it seemed to indicate that a large part of Mumbai is going to get flooded thanks to climate change. Kind of bears out the scenario that you described, which then brings me to the next question. What then should be the salient features, or what are the salient features of the Climate Action Plan? And is the focus more on adapting to the disasters that will happen, or is there a lot of focus on preventing further emissions, doing a lot of mitigation work so that the situation does not get worse, or do we see a mix of both? Could you share some salient features with us?
In order to honor its international commitments, which I just mentioned of, the Government of India prepared its own National Climate Action Plan way back in 2008, and it asked all the states to prepare their own state climate action plans. And accordingly, the state of Maharashtra also prepared its own state climate adaptation action plan in 2014. It was submitted to Government of India, but in view of certain guidelines and the common framework laid down by the Ministry of Environment and Forest, revisions were made to that plan. And what we have prepared now is the revised state action plan. Now, as I discussed, it analyzes the past climate change over last 50 years, from 1970 till 2020. It makes projections for the next 30 years, from 2020 till 2050, and tries and analyzes the vulnerability of the state to various climatic risks at regional level, at district level, at sub-district level as well. To answer your question, the previous plan talked only about adaptation. So it was called the State Climate Adaptation Action Plan. But the current plan lays an equal emphasis on both adaptation as well as mitigation. So it comes out with adaptation strategies pertaining to agriculture, water resources, public health, tourism, tribal development, and comes out with mitigation strategies pertaining to energy, transport, forestry, buildings. An important feature of this state action plan is the state cooling plan. We have the national cooling plan. We also have come out with the state cooling plan, especially in habitat sector and in forestry sector, because in agricultural sector, because we know that almost 30% of food grains are lost for not having cold storage and warehousing facilities. So the plan provides for that. Then there is also what we call the decentralized renewable energy livelihoods, because there is a lot of disguised employment in agricultural sector. So the plan intends to create a decentralized livelihood and employment, especially in rural areas, especially in agriculture and allied sectors, by using technologies such as, say, solar HP or solar dryers or vertical fodder grow units. Another salient feature of this plan is, for the first time, the concept of climate finance has been introduced in this plan, which didn't exist previously. So, if you look at the figures of 2022 and 23, almost 11.95% of the state funds were earmarked for climate-related activities. Now, the plan recommends 5% increase per annum, so as to better mobilize finance on climate combat activities. So these can be cited as some of the features of the plan. And of course, the state, as you are aware, has created the machinery of State Climate Action Cell to implement the plan. And we also intend to do the same even at district level and city level.
I get it. And I was just wondering, as you were speaking, that we're actually in the middle of a huge infrastructure creation phase. And even as we create infrastructure, we are forced sometimes to get rid of some of our forests. So we have railway lines going through forests, we have to build roads around forests and so on. Does that put the state at greater risk, or is there something we are doing that makes sure that we are compensating in some way?
No, you're right. Of course, there is always an opportunity cost, and we have to choose between development and our environment. But the answer is very clear. We have to develop sustainably. So whatever infrastructure that we develop has to be, say, flood prone, in case it is a coastal infrastructure like coastal road. We have to see to it that mangroves are not cut. In fact, they are grown and they are spread. We have to ensure that infrastructure is sustainable, and we have to protect it from mitigation perspective. That care we have to take. Otherwise, all that entire money that we expend on building infrastructure, particularly on the coast, in a city like Mumbai, will all go west unless we care to protect it from the upcoming disasters which are projected. So that's going to be an integral part of the disaster management plan of the state.
Wonderful. So typically it's believed that two major solutions lie in the space of renewable energy and in the space of e-mobility. Is there something the state is doing in these spaces to make sure that we make the most of the opportunity that is available to us?
The transition that I talked about is going to be a massive transition. And it has to be primarily in the field of energy, transportation, and industry. Now, if you look at the energy, then we, at the moment, we have almost 24% of our energy coming from renewable sources. And our goal is to increase it to 50% by 2030. If you talk about transportation, then in the year 2021, the state announced its e-vehicle policy. It was a landmark policy announced for the first time in the country. I see several captains of industry here, so they would appreciate the fact that they're aware the industrial policy divides the state's industrial areas into 5 categories, ranging between category A and D+, based on the level of industrial development. And the maximum incentives accrue to D+ category area from investment point of view. What this policy does is, irrespective of where you invest in the state, you could invest in the most industrialized place like Mumbai or Pune, or least industrialized place like the lower Konkan or Vidarbha, Marathwada. Still, you will get all the benefits which accrue to the least industrialized area. So that is from the supply point of view. From demand point of view, we also the policy gives incentives to the purchasers of electrical vehicles. And we plan to develop EV penetration in a very systematic way, in a very strategic way. So what we intend to do is promote public transport, basically municipal transport, 3-wheelers and tempos. So very soon the entire municipal transport in the state will go electric. Mumbai has the target of having electric buses by 2025. We have made it compulsory for all the government departments to procure only electrical vehicles. We also very soon would want to promote e-trucks. Extend this policy to state transport buses. We have placed an order for 5,000 state transport buses which are electric. We are mindful of the fact that all this electrical vehicle penetration would call for a massive charging infrastructure. So the policy provides for setting up charging infrastructure in cooperative housing societies, shopping malls, parking lots, petrol pumps, SC stands, railway stations. 20% of public place in the parking lot is reserved for the electrical vehicles. For societies which provide electrical vehicle infrastructure, charging infrastructure, by means of incentive, there is concession given in property tax. You are aware that recently the state built this mega highway, the 8-lane Samruddhi highway joining Mumbai, connecting Mumbai with Nagpur. It's a mega highway which is also conceived as an e-way with electric charging stations dotting along the road. So I think as a result of the EV policy that we have, we could attain almost 3 lakhs electrical vehicle registration by the end of last year. And still more is yet coming.
So from what you're saying, it does appear that implementing climate action in the state is also a very good business opportunity. So let me ask you the last question. How can members of the chamber work with you to help implement the climate action plan and grow the state sustainably?
That's the most relevant question for the day. Of course, the national government, the state government, the local city government, they are the ones who prepare the plans. But when it comes to implementation, government alone would not be adequate. because the scale and the challenge of the climate challenge itself is so humongous that we all need to join hands as climate warriors with the government. It has to be a collaborative enterprise. And in fact, for all the climate actions that the government of Maharashtra is undertaking, we have various think tanks collaborating with us. Like we have, with the support of CEW, we have formulated the state climate action plan. We are formulating city climate action plans. We have formulated one for Mumbai, but we are formulating others for other cities like Chhatrapati Sambhajinagar, Nasik, and Sholapur, with the support of WRI, with the support of C40, for example. They have created a tool called HERB, the Health Efficient Retrofitted Buildings. Because when the temperatures rise, the rich can switch on the AC. But what happens to those living in ordinary houses? So retrofitting could be a solution. So that's a tool used for retrofitting. Very recently, we launched the roadmap for decarbonization of all the 43 cities. So we are working in collaboration with these. In fact, this should stay not as a government plan, but become a mass movement. And sensing that, the Prime Minister launched at COP26 itself the Mission Life, so that sustainability becomes a movement. And the government of Maharashtra also has launched the Maji Vasundhara mission on 2nd of October 2020. The mission aims at bringing about a holistic development. It has a very simple philosophy. The philosophy is that climate crisis is the result of the imbalance in the 5 elements of nature. And the only way this crisis can be dealt with is by restoring the lost balance between the elements of nature. And based on that, there are 5 thematic themes related to which projects have been developed. And a competition is floated amongst the urban and the rural local self-government bodies. Because that's the only way we can ensure people's participation, by bringing in the local self-governing bodies. So we have about 22,000 village panchayats which are competing under Maji Vasundhara Abhiyan. I'm happy to mention that over the last 3 years, we could plant about 2 crores of trees and create about 16,000 plus green spaces and create water conservation potential of about 117 crores cubic meters. And we could also develop solar installation capacity of about 115 megawatts. So together we could save 1.7 million metric tons of carbon emissions over the last 3 years. But using this forum, I would appeal to the captains of industry who have gathered here. We need a support from you, and you've been there. A lot of action, Anirban, has been happening outside the sphere of government, as it is. Like those who invest in electrical vehicles are already helping climate action. Or say those who are investing in hydrogen electrolyzers, they are helping climate action. The farmers who are growing bamboo plantation, they are helping climate action. But what you can do is that today there was a news that the National Stock Exchange has floated, the National Social Stock Exchange. So you can definitely, I invite you to invest in green projects by means of the CSR.
Thank you very much. I think your sharing of the scale and the various salient features of the action plan gives us an idea of where we as businesses can step forward and contribute. There's a huge amount of opportunity. Every billion, every trillion is opportunity for the business. Thank you for being with us. Look forward to working together, the Chamber and the government, in ensuring sustainable growth for the state. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Abhijit Ghorpade and Mr. Anirban Ghosh for the insightful discussion. I request Mr. Ritesh Tiwari to present a memento to Mr. Abhijit Ghorpade and Anirban Ghosh as a token of appreciation. Sir. Mr. Ritesh Tiwari.
house. It's so important that we don't end up missing the part of the house.
Thank you so much, sir.
I thought the same way.